I'm excited about this panel. It's just nice to see all of you. As you know, I feel pretty strongly about how generous our community is, and that, of course, includes all our corporate philanthropists. You all support so many nonprofits. It's just, you know, not to be believed. And of course, we really appreciate it. I thought it would be nice to give you this opportunity to sort of talk about what your philosophy is, and also to tell us a little bit about how COVID-19 is affecting you. I think it would be good for nonprofits to know that, to know what you're up against, to know where your priorities are, to kind of get a feeling. Just, you know, we don't always get to talk to you all. So this is a sort of a way to connect virtually. So today we have with us certainly our moderator, Kristine Hazzard, who is consulting now, but was the executive director of Berkshire United Way. Many, many people know her, and we've had a great time chatting from various places virtually about how we were gonna go about today. And as panelists, we have Lori Kiley from the Berkshire Bank Foundation, Shelley Humiston from Salisbury Bank and Trust, Larry Hazzard from Guardian Life, and yes, they are related, they're married. Alan Harris from Berkshire Money Management, who we've been reading a lot about lately, and Chuck Leach from Lee Bank, which is the NPC's bank. So I want to thank you all. I know most of you and have certainly heard of all of you, and we really appreciate your time today to come and chat with us. And yeah, so Chris, do you want to take it away? I know we did a little survey beforehand, so maybe you'll share with us some results for that. And I'm going to bow out, but if you need me to moderate chat room or whatever, I'll step back in.
Sounds great. Leanna, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I can't think of a better thing to do while stuck at home than see the lovely faces of many of my colleagues from across the county who, as Leanna just said, you guys are all so incredibly generous, not only with your resources, but your time and your talent, which are equally as important as providing financial support. So thank you all for being here. Just a quick thing, we are, the folks who are on the phone, if any of you, or I'm sorry, are listening in, if you want to ask questions, there is the Q&A box at the bottom, and we ask you to put stuff there, and I'll try to look at it, PJ's looking at it, Leanna's looking at it, so we'll try to manage it. A lot of the questions, if there are a lot, they may wait a little till the end, but if they seem timely, I'll just go ahead and jump in and ask somebody if it's a follow-up to something that's been said. So just in terms of the survey that Leanna mentioned, with 20 on the call, this is on the Zoom opportunity webinar, it's great. We heard from about 12 people, and it's interesting because the organizations participating are across the board in terms of what they represent. One of the questions was, what % of your revenue comes from local corporations, businesses, banks, etc.? And in the least was 2 or 3 agencies said 0. So there's nowhere for them to go but up if you guys give them some good ideas. And one was 90%. So clearly that person's probably on trying to make sure they know what's going on. In terms of geography, about a third are from Pittsfield, 5 from Lenox. I thought that was interesting. 2 from Great Barrington and 1 from Connecticut, Litchfield County. Size of the organization also crossed the map. One had, you know, sort of 0 budget, meaning they're probably a founder-based organization just starting up, to a high of $5.5 million. So it's, again, that's a little bit all over the place. In terms of who responded to the survey, 3 development directors, 3 executive directors, 2 are board members, and a couple are consultants or contractors working on behalf of organizations in their fundraising efforts. Size of development department, again, 0 was the least, 5 was the most. So most are 0, 1, 2, very small. A couple said, I'm the ED, I do everything. So I remember those days. You may not have a staff, but you got to get it done. I thought it was really interesting. We asked the question about if they're planning to have a virtual event, and almost everybody said yes. So some already are, but 9 of them said yes, we're planning, or we've got something already in the works, and 3 are sort of maybe trying to figure it out. There was one person who commented, we are planning one, sadly. And I think, you know, I get it. It's, you want to be with people, or, you know, that's just our nature as human beings. And so making this adjustment is difficult, but we've been in it so long now. I mean, everybody I'm talking to is by Zoom. That's just how work is happening. I know some of you were big Zoom and Skype users already, so it's natural for you, but I think for people in the social service arena particularly, we are used to literally touching our clients and those we're trying to serve. So it is difficult, but it is the reality, and we've got to, find that new real as we keep hearing about. Specific questions, we have questions I'm going to run through, and I'll call on each panelist so we don't get too much jumping over each other. But there was a couple of questions about really variety in revenue. How do people get to that, mixed revenue reality, so that one big hit doesn't take you out or what have you. The person asked the question: is it okay to bill for talk about an event being free, but they ask for donations? So we can all respond to that. I have my own opinion. Another one was about messaging. I think, how do you get your message out to people? And I think that was spoken about a little bit earlier in one of the webinars as well. And then major donor cultivation during COVID-19. I think it's, the Berkshires, there's so many wonderful things about the Berkshires, including our vast number of second homeowners, some who are here and some who are not here. And those who are here are not necessarily saying, come on over and visit me, because that's not what we're supposed to be doing right now. So it is a challenging time to do major donor cultivation. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to just jump right into our questions. Just for you guys, if you took a look at the first, I'm going to break the first one into two parts, because I think how you do business normally is really important. And then, what's different with COVID. And so I think it would just be helpful to start with what's your normal or what's your standard philanthropic strategy, and do you have a special focus for your investments? And I'm going to ask Chuck to be the first one to answer that question. You got to unmute yourself, Chuck.
Thanks, Chris. So I think a lot of what we try to do is align our charitable giving strategy with kind of the overall bank strategy. So obviously we're a smaller organization. We're a smaller bank. We're a bank that doesn't pursue like a model of scale, like scaling up and kind of going all over the place. We're really focused on this geographical region specifically. So, we're really focusing on that relationship building as a bank. But then from a charitable standpoint, it's kind of the same thing. So it makes it easy from that standpoint. So while a big piece of it obviously is passing out checks and determining dollar amounts and putting money out into the community, we try to kind of balance that with opportunity for engagement for the bank itself or for our employees. So there are kind of, it goes beyond kind of that transaction and trying to have a little more give and take there. So I'll leave it there for now. And I think you're muted now as well.
You have to unmute.
Kristine, you're muted. Kristine, stop. Go back. You're muted.
You're on mute.
There you go. Sorry about that. Going on and on. Thank you, Chuck, for introducing us. And we do have 3 banks on the video today, so I thought I'd mix it up and ask Larry to comment next in terms of Guardian, which is a financial institution but not a bank and is national, so you might have a different way of doing things.
Sure. We're very invested locally because we have the office here. Honestly, we get virtually no revenue from the Berkshires, but it is a primary office location for us. Because of the nature of what we do have a focus area, which is primarily around financial stability and workforce development. So much of the need out in the community is really driven by financial need, right, and financial inequity. So we focus a lot of attention on that. We have a program with Berkshire Community College on building financial literacy in folks. But in working with workforce development to make sure people have skills that are marketable and what the community needs, we do focus a lot of attention there. Now, that being said, we do fund some programs that are focused on things like education and health and wellness and the arts locally, because they're so important to the local community. We do focus some attention there as well.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep myself unmuted because otherwise I'm going to be muting and unmuting constantly. And thank God Alan Bobby, so I didn't know what I was doing. So how about we hop over to Lori, obviously a much larger bank, also with, I think, a national footprint, and you are head of the foundation, which is amazing. So it's great to see you in that position.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for having me. Just to clarify, we're just talking about pre-COVID, our priorities.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so I do oversee the Berkshire Bank Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of Berkshire Bank. A little different than some other banks that may not have a foundation. So we have the bank, and then we have the foundation, which has an endowment, which is for philanthropic support. So we do have priority areas, and we've changed them and tweaked them over the years. Like Chuck said, we do align our foundation priorities with the overall priorities of the bank. And about a year ago, the bank set a pretty aggressive priority of working on programs and initiatives to help close the wealth gap. So supporting programs that are helping to close the wealth gap, especially the racial wealth gap, but also the gap between those that have and have not, as far as underrepresented populations of many different types. So earlier this year, we did align ourselves with that mission, and we've tweaked our priorities a little bit. Some of these have been similar over the years, but we focus on 4 specific areas. And this, I will say, is pre-COVID. A little bit of that has gone out the window over the last couple of months. But our priorities continue to be providing access to resources for underserved populations to become college, career, and job ready. So to be able to contribute to the economic vitality of their communities, providing access to quality, affordable housing options that meet the evolving needs of our communities. And affordable housing has always been a key priority of the bank. Promoting and supporting small business growth and entrepreneurship, especially for underserved populations. Entrepreneurial organizations have been just growing over the last few years in all of our markets. And it's really, small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the economies of every market that we serve. So I think really just working to foster that as far as people that may not have the means or the resources to start a business, but they have a good idea. There's a lot of great programs out there that we've supported, as well as providing opportunities for education and dialogue around the wealth gap, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We receive lots of applications from nonprofits seeking funds for education around DEI, something they may not have funds necessarily for a budget for, so that's something that's important to us as well. Of course, as Chuck mentioned, we're a company, we're a bank, we're the foundation for the bank. So we have, there's lots of relationships out there that have to do with business needs. The foundation doesn't make decisions based on relationships, of course, but we do support other organizations. They may not meet our top priorities that we might have some kind of relationship with. They may not be bank related, but maybe we're providing volunteer work. Volunteerism is a key piece of our culture at Berkshire Bank, as well as financial education, or we may have a colleague on their board. Health organizations generally fall in that category. And we call those community building grants, and those are proactive. So we provide, we kind of seek out the organizations that we'd like to support. Also, we're in 7 states, so we're not just, as Chris mentioned, in Berkshire County. Berkshire County is one of our largest markets as far as our budget goes and our deposits go, I believe. But we have, 10 distinct markets, so we have budgets for each of those, separated by each region. But Berkshire County has always been a very important and key market for us, and it's our home kind of operational hub currently. So,
thank you, Lori. So, Alan, you are a very unique participant today because you are one of those entrepreneurs. You are a owner-run business, which is really exciting, and have a different kind of structure. We'd love to hear about your strategy and any priorities that you have.
Sure. I am from Berkshire Money Management, and it's interesting, the word strategy. I guess I used to have a strategy, and I'd say now I have a philosophy, and it's probably kind of an evolution of my view on philanthropy, and maybe a dialogue and how I've matured and grown over the years. Once upon a time, the strategy would be to elevate the community, with the idea being if I can elevate the community, elevate the business community, of course, which would affect Berkshire Money Management. And that's why we did we had a big focus on essentially return on investment, ROI. And that's why we did a lot of work that was more community development. And we still do a lot of work in community development, because quite frankly, as far as fundraisers go, those tend to be the most fun ones to be involved with. But strategies sort of turned to philosophy. We're not very targeted. We just tend to, we're not very targeted in the sense that I try to help everybody, but you can't help everybody too big. So we do focus a lot on animals, which has absolutely no ROI. It has a whole lot of ROE, return on emotion. And that's really what the philosophy has really sort of become. I get to do things for the community still, which is great. But now we're able to go ahead because we did the strategy and we built up the community, well, at least played with that, helped with that. We built up our business, built up our balance sheet. We're able to do more things than we used to. And so we're able to help not just the strategy, but in the ROI, but the ROE, which to me is great because we'll help people that I'll never ever meet. I'll help people that in no way is going to affect my business whatsoever, but it feels good. So the strategy used to be return on investment, but now the philosophy now is just to make myself feel good about it. So they're both very selfish in some way. It's just one used to be more monetarily selfish and one now is more emotionally selfish.
That's fantastic and very honest as you always are, Alan. So Shelley, not last but least at all, and I promise I'm going to do different rounds each time. So you're first now, you'll be fifth last to do the next. But Shelley, tell us a little bit about Salisbury Bank and their philanthropic strategy and any focus.
So I guess similar to what Chuck and Lori had said, certainly we try to, our strategies to align with our vision, core values, and we also, we try to give to many organizations. And as Alan said, unfortunately, there are times we have to turn down some requests and we feel terrible about that, but we don't have a foundation. So, it's a direct impact to our income. So, we try to budget that annually. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. But we try to focus on certainly affordable housing is important for us as well. Food needs, we give a lot of support to food pantries in our markets, and we're in 3 states, Connecticut, New York, and Massachusetts. So, we certainly, similar to what Chuck said, we do, have some focus on relationship building, and that's certainly factored in. It doesn't mean that we won't give contributions to, organizations that are not customers. We certainly do. But again, we give to approximately 200 organizations annually. And, certainly with employees, volunteerism is a huge part of that as well. And some that we partner with, we actually reach out to our employee base to help support some of their major fundraising events with volunteers from the bank. And we sort of partner with them, and that's just, that's been an excellent opportunity for both as well. But those are some of our areas, arts, education, scholarships. We do have our own scholarship program, so we tend to not give to too many, organizations requesting scholarship grants specifically, because we do have our own program that we do. So those are some of our areas.
Great, thank you, Shelley. And I think it's, hopefully we'll get into this conversation. I think it's not unusual that organizations today do have their own sort of internal processes too, and it's important for people to know that because obviously you have that right, but it's also part of employee engagement, and so that's something that's really terrific. So I think we'll get into that with some of the later questions, but I'm glad you brought that up. Lori, I'm going to start with you on the COVID-19 changes because you brought it up in terms of talking about now, or are you talking about before? So what's it really meant to Berkshire Bank to be caught in this pandemic reality?
Yes, well, we're all, as we know, facing unprecedented times. I mean, it's something that's not happened in any of our lifetimes, and hopefully will never again happen in our lifetime. But it's been just, just something that, I don't think we necessarily saw coming, and it's just kind of devastated all of the communities and nonprofits that we serve and support. So what we did early on was we knew there was going to be a huge financial need in a variety of places. So we committed as a bank to provide some capital to support small businesses, especially minority-owned small businesses. But as a foundation, we actually right away asked our board for permission to tap into our endowment over and above our budgets. So we set the budgets at the beginning of the year and run our regular grant program throughout the year, knowing that we'd have to kind of dig into those budgets and support some other things. We asked if we could tap into the endowment, which we did, to up to $1 million. So we went $1 million over and above our regular grant budget, which is $3 million, to support just all of our markets. And as I mentioned, we're in 7 states and 10 distinct markets. So what we decided to do was support the collaborative efforts, which have been really, I was amazed to see the collaboration and partnership come together so quickly in all of our communities, especially Berkshire County. So, you know, the Berkshire United Way, as you know, and Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation came together quickly to establish the COVID-19 response fund. That raised over, I think, $2 million at this point, which is great. Just really immediately getting money out the door to support the need. So that kind of collaboration was happening in pretty much all the markets that we serve. So we have supported those collaborative efforts pretty significantly, as well as small business support. So we also committed to supporting organizations that were providing grants to small businesses. And this was way before PPP even came out. There were some efforts around trying to support small businesses with funding just to keep them, you know, going for a few weeks, just until they could even get any, you know, help from the federal government. So I know that in Berkshire County, One Berkshire is putting together a fund, and they aren't actually, it changed a little bit along the way. They were originally planning to provide grant funding. I think it's changed, especially because of the PPP, which has kind of turned into, can be a grant if used properly. So they are going to be providing, I think they're going to be putting together some technical assistance. This is going to be a long road, I think, for nonprofits and small businesses to kind of dig out of this. So there's going to be continued need. So we used those funds to support those efforts. So along, you know, around small business support, the collaborative efforts that were really the humanitarian essential need, you know, food insecurity being the biggest one in every area that we serve. Additionally, we are approving any request that we receive for funds that we already provided to be unrestricted. So if we supported one particular program and they need it for operations, we're allowing that to happen at this point, just because knowing that they really need to, you know, do what they can to keep themselves going. We also have supported events, and we were talking about virtual events, and you know, we're also, you know, kind of allowing any funds that we provided for events to go to whatever the alternative event turns into being. And in some cases, it may be better because, you know, the community is supportive, knowing that the need is so great at this time, and they don't have the expense associated with the event itself. If it's virtual, it's not as costly as it would be if it were in person. So those are some of the things that we've done to support the immediate need.
That's great. Pivot on the spot. You have to do it. Alan, you have gotten some nice attention for doing some pretty cool stuff in the community during this crazy, crazy time. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's interesting because there's a bit of an intersection between philanthropy and what I do as a job. So at the very core of what we do is investing. You know, we try to figure out what's going to go up and what's going to go down, and it's based on some sort of trends. And I know people at BMC. We all know people at BMC. And a respiratory therapist was telling me how they were reusing the masks that they had. And then this is early February. It was before a vacation they took, so I think it's early February. And by the time I got back from vacation late February, there was more and more conversation about that. And we started seeing the trends that were occurring in China, then in Italy, and then started seeing some instances of outbreaks, very small here in the States. And the conversation we had at Berkshire Money Management was, you know, if this becomes a big deal, and I use New York City just as an example, like hyperbole, but if we had an outbreak in Manhattan, then the world's going to shut down. And all the supply chain problems that we're seeing are going to be a problem for us here in the States. And it's going to be an economic issue too. So we use that, of course, on our job, bought a bunch of put options, which allowed us to, you know, make sure we didn't lose money like the market did. And then the money we saved, we're able to go out and buy about 50,000 masks, and maybe got a hold of like 4 pallets worth of gowns and a ton of scrubs and those face shields and boxes and boxes, trucks loads of latex-free gloves and all that stuff. And try to figure out who needed it. And obviously the hospital needed it. But it turned out so many other people needed it too that I just hadn't really even considered, you know, nursing homes and ambulance drivers. So we didn't order 50,000 at once. We ordered whatever it was, 50,000 masks it was. We just kept on ordering more and more because the demand grew outrageously. We were at one point in Pittsfield, in the New York Times article, per capita, I think Pittsfield was the 8th most outbreaks per capita in the nation or something like that. So, I mean, we could have bought a lot of this stuff and not ever used it, and would have shipped it somewhere else that had it. It just so happened that we really ended up needing it a lot here. So that's been my job for the last 2 months, basically, is the collection and distribution of PPE. I actually had to hire someone 3 weeks ago or so to help me with that, because it was just, I couldn't handle it myself and still do my job. And so, you know, I don't foresee, and maybe I'm naive, COVID-19 having a big effect on the way we do philanthropy a year or two from now. Maybe I'm naive because I'm hoping that we're going to get back to social gathering. But it's been a really, so it might not affect the way I do things, but I think it'll have more of a community effect. I hope it's a lingering community effect, because one thing that's really interesting, and there was an article recently in the Berkshire Eagle with Jennifer Bailey from BMC, who I don't know personally, I've just interacted with her back and forth with emails, how she's sort of the go-to logistics person for everyone who's coming to BMC to deliver food for the frontline workers. And that's something that we did ourselves. We partnered up initially with the Red Lion Inn and purchased, I think, 800 meals for the course of 4 different weeks. And then we went and we tried to go through a GoFundMe page, but that was a disaster. So we don't want to talk about, we can talk about that, but they didn't release the funds for COVID-19 related fundraisers because there's so much scamming, and we needed the money now. So we canceled it and refunded everybody. I just self-funded it with the money we raised. I just self-funded it. And we were able to go ahead and get, I don't know how many meals, but about, with the Red Line included, maybe $35,000, $40,000 of meals that went to local restaurants, which is great because they're all very, very much so hurt. Then employees are getting paid because they would have otherwise been not getting that paycheck. And then we're able to comfort not just the frontline workers, but we made sure we had enough meals that were going to the restaurants for everybody from reception to janitorial to maintenance and ongoing. So it was like a real triple win that we're able to go ahead and come up with nothing necessarily creative because everybody was doing it. People were like literally showing up with brownies and they had to figure out who to give the brownies to. We were able just to be able to do on a little bit larger of a scale that I hope was pretty helpful for the local community, for the businesses, as well as everyone else who received the food.
That's terrific. And, you know, Alan, it's funny when I think first it was Governor Cuomo, then Baker, within a couple of days, they said, okay, now everybody should wear masks. And I remember saying, where is anybody going to get a mask? You can't get a mask. And like, you know, 2 days later, 5,000 you distributed, I think.
Oh yeah, I actually forgot about that.
It was pretty big.
I think I forgot about it because it took about 26 minutes. We
And my dad was in line.
Kate Luzon is like the best. I don't know if anybody knows her. She's like the head of the Berkshire Seamsters, and I've been working with her collaboratively in terms of getting together masks, helping with a little bit of funding and all that stuff. But we've been going back and forth with each other. And we already had a couple thousand masks. And once Governor Baker said we have to, you know, everyone wear face covering, I'm like, how much more do you got? She's like, I got 3,000. I'm like, give them to me. I bought them from them. And we said noon to 4 on Thursday, whatever it was, come on through. We're going to give you a family size pack of masks, 5 per mask. People were showing up the day before. I mean, I can't come in before, we're just not ready for it. Then they were showing up an hour early, and then the cops moved everybody because they were blocking the road. Cars were lined up from Walmart to Wacona, literally Walmart to Wacona. And the state troopers asked, they were very cool about it, but they asked if they could shut it down 26 minutes into it. in 26 minutes, we went through 4,000 masks. We would have been done in another 12, 18 minutes probably. But it shows how much of a demand there was out there. People were caught by surprise knowing that they needed it, and people who wanted it before didn't have an opportunity to have it. We've gotten, the latest thing we've been doing actually is we've been putting together bags, I've been calling them comeback bags. I read an article in Berkshire Eagle called Mind Your Business, and it's for businesses, really decision makers, to improve the business. And one of the last articles I wrote was how to prepare for their comeback. And instead of, well, in addition to actionable advice, we created an actionable bag. And so we put in each bag was something like, and I customized some of it depending on the size of the organization, of course, but KN95 masks, the homemade masks, painter's tape to mark off social distancing, hand sanitizer, isopropyl rubbing alcohol with glass sprayers. Oh, I have one laying right here. A infrared digital no-touch thermometer. So all the things that, latex-free gloves, the things that businesses will need to reopen again, because they waited until the 18th to find out if they were going to be open on the 19th, and they weren't sure even then what to do. And I know a lot of people were caught off guard because we packed up 125 bags and they went out already. I had to order 125 bags to get out. I've got emails that are, I shut my emails, but emails are popping up all day. I'm like, I need to stuff more bags and get them out. So there's this huge demand for the healthcare workers. So that was phase one. Phase 2A was getting them out to the community. Phase 2B now is getting them out, and have been, and they're continuing to get them out to businesses.
Fantastic. I know about the line because when I got home one day, I had an emergency. We had this emergency call from Dalton Pittsfield, I think, or Dalton Hinsdale in Peru, and it said, "Don't go to Berkshire Money Management." It was pretty funny. I was happy for you.
Thank you.
Anyway, Shelley, how about over at Salisbury? How has COVID-19 changed your philanthropy and work?
So it has had a huge impact in terms of changing the way that we handle it. We still, we receive requests on a rolling basis and review them as they're received. But we did take a bit of a proactive approach, and we actually, our CEO did a nice letter, and we reached out to many of the organizations that we give to on an annual basis, letting them know that, we understand that many can't have their major fundraising events as they normally would. So we actually did something similar to what Lori did. We went to our board and said, look, rather than spread this out over the year as we normally would, we'd like to take a proactive approach and sort of front load most of the major contributions that we would give to help them out during this time. And some others, as Lori said, actually were kind enough to reach out to us that we had already given to and said, look, you sponsored this event, which we can't have now, would you like us to return the funds to you? Or which I thought was, very kind. And we certainly did the same and said, absolutely not, keep the funds, do what you need to do to get through this time. So that has been, very well received, I think, from the organizations, very appreciative. And, we continue we're still processing some of those requests, but that's sort of one of the things. But I don't see, other than that, it having, sort of a huge impact. We'll continue to go through requests, and, we have approval, to exceed budget if needed, because again, it's just an unprecedented time and we recognize the need.
That's terrific, Shelley. It's so nice to hear that there have been many who have said, use the money you already have for what you need to do. We trust you. I mean, that's really what it's about, right? So that's terrific. Larry,
Yeah.
how about over at Guardian? How has COVID-19 impacted your philanthropy?
Well, as I mentioned, our philanthropic objectives, I mean, historically, we're much longer term in nature. And as far as trying to get to the root cause of, what is driving the need that we have in the community, as was highlighted so eloquently with the lines of people, waiting for masks. We're at a point now where there's immediate need far beyond what the community was prepared to deal with. So like the others, we've increased the funds that we have to support local agencies and helping people with a need. I would say the primary focus has been on hunger relief and small business relief. So we continue to be focused on that while continuing the others. And I would say, like the others as well, agencies that we've already funded who haven't been able to do programs that the money was originally intended for, we've recommended that they just redirect if they have a purpose. If they can't use it at all and they want to give it back, then we'll certainly fund them in the future and repurpose the money through some of the avenues we have.
Great. And Chuck?
Let me just unmute myself. So like Shelley, not like a significant shift in our approach. One thing I would note is it seems like a lot of the nonprofits through this kind of went a little quiet as opposed to the normal flow, particularly as you get into the spring, which kind of speaks to the situation where everybody was kind of hunkering down and work from home, and in a lot of cases really shutting down. So one of the things we did, similar again to Shelley, is just a little bit more of an outreach to sort of ask if they needed support, or sort of proactively reach out and provide support in a few different cases. There were the outliers like the COVID-19 fund pulled together by Berkshire United Way and Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, so contributing to that, kind of going above and beyond our normal budget. I do feel like, though, that this is, at least for us, this is kind of a turning point in terms of our approach. So going forward, kind of sharpening the focus a little bit of our charitable contributions, and where maybe previously it's been a bit more of a scattershot across, the whole breadth of nonprofits, really kind of focusing in on our workforce and, supporting the community, really more community directed and workforce directed, which in turn support the culturals, but, on a go forward basis, kind of zeroing in there to kind of address this crisis and the lingering impact of the crisis as well. Some of the things we'll also be doing kind of at this turning point, we're embarking on strategic planning this summer, as we do every 3 years. And this conversation, this topic will be a centerpiece of that as we kind of expand our reach, expand our resources that we're going to be allocating towards charitable contributions into the community, give us some more flexibility, but also sharpen that focus a little bit more. And like the others, particularly the banks mentioned, there's sort of this blurred line anyway between banks and
I thought it was pausing for dramatic effect there for a second, but.
PJ, I don't think is there anything you can do to help out with this technical glitch?
Not necessarily.
I thought you were going to say that. You told us it was all our own internet that we had to deal with.
We'll maybe stop and start Chuck's video and see if that helps.
Okay.
I will say, pausing a good look. It looks very handsome right there. So it could have been much worse, like in the middle of it. You got lucky, Chuck. You look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it never pauses with good face for me. It's always that regrettable blackmail face.
Well, hopefully he will be back with us in a moment and we can circle back with him, but to sort of keep things going, many of you have already sort of mentioned this in some way in terms of decision-making and the role of your employees in your philanthropy and volunteering. I mean, many of you said that's part of it. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of, organizations understanding that engagement is really important to you, and that's almost the first step into, the philanthropy that may come later. It's not, we're going to write a check today, we want to get to know you type of thing. So I think I was going to ask that to Chuck next because he's already on a roll, but I'll ask Alan. Alan, you're unique again on the panel because as an owner run company. You can make all the decisions yourself if you so choose to, but it's pretty obvious from some of the stuff that has happened that that's not the case. So why don't you talk about employee engagement and decision making?
Yeah, I guess there's two different conversations there. One is the employee engagement and my thoughts behind that, and then where do the decisions come from in terms of where I'm going to spend my dollars. And I have an odd view, I guess, on the engagement part of it. So I have a pretty great staff when it comes to doing things that are philanthropic. Well, monetarily, they don't tell me about they do it, but their own time, on their own time, not my time. I have someone who donated bone marrow. I have someone who works on the weekends in terms of working with the churches to get food out. I have someone who does pro bono work for financial people who are in, who are in need for that. So the arrangement I have with my people is, you come in, you give me your 35 best hours, I'm going to pay you, do the best you can for the firm. And the understanding, sort of the unspoken understanding, is that's going to help the firm. The firm's going to become more profitable, and we're going to spend that money back out in the community. So I don't ask them to directly give their time. I do ask them to come to me when they have something that is personal to them and they want to have some funding. So they influence some of the decision making. This is completely arbitrary. There's a third of it is my employees and my clients. A lot of our clients have come to us, and they know we give stuff. And all of us have clients who come to us and say, can you write a check for our organization? So we get a lot of that driven, or check writing driven that way. A third is just either my personal things, where it's very heavily animal influenced. And Larry and I have actually done some work with that in the past. He's done some great work in the Illinois Sun Singing Shelter in the past, and love supporting them. I find friends who are involved with charities, so they sit with me and they tell me their story and what needs to be done. So I hear that and I become engaged in that. And then sometimes the COVID-19 thing is just something very blaring and obvious. In January, the Australian wildfires, very blaring and obvious. Then a third of it is I have a person who's dedicated to helping me help the community, I guess. Her title, her name is Nicole DuPont, and she's our community development coordinator. And so she has her finger on the pulse better than I will, just because the philanthropic part of what Berkshire Money Management does, quite frankly, eats up a lot of my time when I need to do other things for the business. So we hired someone who would actually do that. And so the decisions of where to put money are kind of split up. Clients and employees, myself, my pun intended pet projects, and then my community development coordinator.
Terrific. Sounds great. Shelley, how about for you guys? How involved are employees in your philanthropic decisions? And I think you mentioned volunteering is really important to you guys.
It is. And, we, similar to what Alan said, it's really, we don't specifically provide time for employees to volunteer. So we're pretty proud of the fact that, we have, we do track it, and we have over 7,000 hours annually. And again, that's our employees' own time apart from work. So we don't grant time, but, we do staff updates bank-wide on a quarterly basis, and we do draw names, and we actually give out gift cards. They have to choose a local business, and we draw a certain number of gift cards that we give out quarterly for those people that volunteer for whatever it may be, the fire department, EMT services, the food pantry, whatever it is they do. Their name is in a spreadsheet, and we just randomly draw names and do that for them, and that goes over really well. But again, it's we don't have specific, I'll have my own specific pet project, as Alan said. I have a certified therapy dog, so my husband and I do a lot of work with our therapy dog in different a juvenile detention facility, in Ronald McDonald House, in Phelps Memorial Hospital, in the cancer infusion unit. So that's sort of one of my passion projects, but everyone has their own thing, and we just encourage you know, all of them, no matter what it is, to, you know, to do that. And we're very fortunate that, you know, we have so many people willing to give of their time. And unfortunately, a bit differently is that we don't take individual employee requests, only because we have so many employees spread out that we just wouldn't be able to give to sort of individual employee projects, if you will. That's disappointing from, you know, at times, but they've all been very understanding. So we will support, you know, if they want to get a team together of, you know, employees to participate and you know, do different projects. We've done rebuilding projects together as an example, and we will support something like that where, you know, it's sort of a team effort. But if it's, you know, someone's, you know, son is doing, you know, a project at school, unfortunately, we just can't give to every one of those. So we tend to, you know, stay from those. But other than that, that's how we handle it.
That's great. 7,000 hours is a lot of people's time, and that's so
A
impressive.
lot of time.
So good for your team. We did get notice that all of Lead Bank lost internet, so we're not going to see Chuck for a little bit, I guess, but hopefully he'll be back. And we do have a question in the Q&A, but I'm going to let you guys finish this round, and then I can pose that to you guys. So Larry, what about Guardian and volunteering? I know because of my closeness to you and the organization that it's a really important thing.
It is a very important thing. And actually, I would say the majority of our giving is driven by employees. You know, we do have the corporate interest, corporate direction, and so on as far as things that we're very interested in. But we have a board of employees who oversee the Berkshire Life Charitable Foundation. You know, that gives out hundreds of thousands every year to the local community, and that's all made up of employees. The other thing I would say is, you know, we're always a very strong United Way supporter, and we continue to be so. To help ease giving, we came up with our own charitable portal that people use. And while we're still actively supporting United Way, employees can donate to any charity they want through the portal. And the importance of that is anything that's donated through the portal, whether it's United Way or any individual charity, the company will match. So that drives, you know, the majority of what we're giving really is people deciding what's important to them, what's important to the local community. That's also tied to the charitable work that people do. So, you know, if I'm volunteering in an organization, I can go into the portal and put the hours in there, and we'll translate that into a monetary donation as well too. So we have a financial match for volunteer hours that people put in as well too. So it's really the local employees who control the majority of where the money goes in the community. And quite honestly, I think that makes the most sense. I mean, to have, you know, New York plus myself determining, you know, who needs it the most in the community, I think would probably be the least informed group that you could have making that decision. You know, one of the greatest assets I think Berkshire County has is how incredibly networked the community is. You know, as you know, Kristine, we lived in very transient locations before moving up here where people worked in New York and commuted an hour and a half or whatever. And people just were not networked as deeply as they are here. So people, you know, you only have to ask a few people and you really find out where the need is. So I think it's in the right hands in our organization for the way we're structured to have the employees really have the majority of control over that.
That's great. And Lori, Berkshire Bank is, you know, on the map for volunteering. You guys just do so much. It's definitely a core value. Tell us a little bit about how that impacts your philanthropy.
Sure, it's definitely a key piece of our culture at Berkshire Bank, volunteering. A lot of employees say it's one of the best things that they like about working for the company is our commitment to giving back through volunteerism. We have a pretty structured program, so we have regional committees that plan and execute all the company-sponsored projects that we undertake throughout all of our footprint. So there's a Berkshire County committee that talks about and plans projects in Berkshire County. And that regional committee is made up of not necessarily the heads of the areas, but, you know, employees that are passionate about volunteering and want to give back and give the time. So we have hundreds of projects each year throughout, you know, all of our markets planned by the corporate volunteer committee. We support some of them, we support them, most of them with financial grants around the project. So it's, you know, covering the cost of the project and things like that. We also have one day a year that we close the company and go out and have everyone volunteer on the same day. It's called Extraordinary Day. Our volunteer program is called the X Team. We've got X's all over our banks, so we use X anywhere. But, so it's called Extraordinary Day. We're shifting the focus a little bit this year because it's June 10th, and we, you know, had planned to have everyone out in the community, and I don't think we'll be having large gatherings at that point in time. We have over 1,000 employees, so just planning that day is a huge undertaking. So we're going to be doing some virtual volunteering, and we've shifted to that model since this has happened. We've been seeking out virtual volunteer opportunities and been undertaking some projects. As far as our philanthropy goes, we do have also regional committees that help us make decisions about our grant funding. So when we receive requests, we have a committee in Berkshire County that we discuss the grant applications and make decisions about what we're going to support, what, you know, taking into consideration our guidelines and our priorities and our budget. And those are made up of the line of business leaders. But we do seek input from employees all the time. So we receive the summaries. It's a monthly process where, you know, there's a meeting once a month. The summaries go out, and then our regional leaders will reach out to the branch managers or people in the, you know, in the actual local community that might have a connection. And sometimes, you know, someone will mention someone's name on the application, and we'll reach out and really learn a little bit more about it. So we involve our employees pretty closely in our grant making. We have employees all the time. We tell them, if you have organizations, you know, that you're close to that you think we should be supporting, we'd love to hear about it. You know, we have a sponsorship opportunity as well, in addition to grant funding. So sponsorships come from the bank funds, and those are managed by the marketing team. And we work together on requests because people apply for, we have an application online, and they can apply for a bank sponsorship or a foundation grant, and they come in the same kind of grant sponsorship portal. And then we make decisions. You know, sometimes someone will apply for a grant, it's better suited as a sponsorship, and vice versa. We can make the switch on the back end. But we do, like I said, involve our employees pretty closely in the process. Another way that we support employees is through a matching gifts program. So we do support, we provide each employee with $500 per year in matching gifts. So not everybody takes advantage of it, but for those that do are philanthropic, they really appreciate it. It can be more than one gift as well. It doesn't have to be all together, but it's our way of helping support what the employees support. So if they have, you know, golf tournaments or walks or runs or things they're trying to raise money for, lots of employees have raised quite a bit of money by asking their colleagues to make contributions, asking their colleagues to make a matching gift as well. And then they raise more money that way. So it's a good way to double the impact and really support what our employees are doing. As far as volunteering goes, also I meant to mention, we provide 16 hours of paid time off for employees to volunteer in company-sponsored projects. So when there's project going on, we have a portal where people can sign up for that project, and they just have to see, you know, as long as there's appropriate staff coverage, they can take time off to go to do that project, whatever it might be. We don't have specific priorities around our volunteering. It's really what the employees are passionate about, what they want to do, what they care about. If employees have an idea for a project, they can bring it to our regional councils that work on planning them, and then they'll, you know, get a few employees together and put it together as an official project. So we track it pretty closely. We have a portal where we ask people to track, you know, the company-sponsored projects are tracked automatically, but we also track independent volunteer activity. We definitely, we're evaluated by the FDIC for CRA as far as CRA service goes. So that's one of the reasons for tracking, but also just to kind of look at in a totality how much volunteering we actually do, which is over 40,000 hours each year. And it's a great, you know, it's a great way for us to, you know, it's certainly a priority of the bank and a key piece of our culture and something that we certainly stand for. And then we provide awards each year to the top volunteer employees. So those that have the most independent activity, the most company-sponsored project activity, and then the combined total. So we provide 3 volunteer awards each year. We also have what we call the honor roll. So any employee that has over 150 hours of volunteering goes on the honor roll, and they receive a little gift and kudos on our intranet and things like that. Email goes out. So.
Very nice. That's awesome, Lori. So I'm going to go off the questions you guys had ahead of time for a moment, if you don't mind, because there are 2 questions, and I think we want to really make sure whoever's listening is getting their questions asked. So the question is from Diane Rosenthal. What advice would you offer to nonprofits who are managing through these challenging times? And what kind of information and communication would you like from your grantees right now? To me, that's both parts of the question are important, but I think that communication part is really important given all the craziness people are dealing with. So let's start with Shelley on that one. I didn't have a plan on that one. It's the new one. So Shelley, any advice you would offer the nonprofits and anything about what kind of information you want to hear from them?
I guess, I don't know that it would be any different sort of, right now during the COVID-19, than typical. Usually, we just ask, we have an online portal as well, and we try to encourage people to utilize that as opposed to going, and dropping off flyers at the branches and things like that. Comes into a centralized location. And it's just, much more efficient. We make sure that we don't lose things that way, but they can, attach any types of flyers or information that they have. And it helps us to ensure that we're getting the information up front that we need if they complete the online submission. So that's very helpful. And it just, it makes it much easier and more efficient for us to process their requests. So there's nothing really, specific. Again, we've had people reach out and ask, if they're not going to have the major fundraiser, are we still, able to support the organization? And our answer has been yes, absolutely. So.
That's great.
Can I take a
Go ahead,
shot
Alan.
question?
Go ahead, Alan.
Interesting, you mentioned how it's important in the communication side, and I'm probably the oddball on it. My thought is just leave me alone on that part. I gave you the money. I trust that you're going to find the right thing to do with it. So I don't need to know, unless you need help, I don't need to know that you're going to do the right thing. I trust you're going to do the right thing. But I think about nonprofits like I do think about businesses. Like your business model just changed. You have a business model of asking people for money, which is not a very sustainable business model. Maybe we'll get into that. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's really hard to ask people for money, especially when you're in a quarter where GDP is probably going to be down 30, 40%. I mean, the numbers are too wacky to even come up with a realistic estimate, but that's not hyperbole. It's going to be something wacky like that. So what can you ask for in response instead? People aren't working now, so you can ask for time. They might not have the money. They do have the money. They might be a little too freaked out to give it because they don't know what's going to happen next. They don't know when they're going to go back to work. They don't know if they're going to have a job when their business opens back up, but they have the time. So you can ask for the time. This is a corporate, so you can ask everybody, and you can ask your own businesses. This is a corporate panel. And on the corporation side, you can ask for some type of in-kind material trade or inventory trade. People aren't selling things right now. They might be inventory they're not going to be able to sell for some period of time because it's going to be so slow to move it anyways. Maybe it's retail in its last season's fashion. I don't know. But you can get that trade. The corporation will be able to have an expense for a donation because they wrote that off. And instead of asking for money, you could possibly try and sell that yourself through the people who usually donate through you. Just a concept, an idea, and I think it's the best one. I still like the labor one more. But then there's, again, you're pitching the problem to which you're trying to find a solution. And again, we're a corporate panel. You can pitch some type of reciprocation. This is a time for us to be in need when we are able to sustain ourselves again and feel more comfortable spending. We're going to remember you. We're going to come back when we do business here. And I talk, part of my job is I talk to business owners. I talk to them a lot. And people are scared that they're not going to have people come back. So if they can do something without writing a check because they don't want to write a check right now, I can completely understand why. That might be an approach. And if you can give them some hope that they're going to actually be able to have some customers come back to them at some point, that might be able to move them a little bit. Maybe not necessarily in the perseverance strings. It's really hard to get people to give money during recession for a lot of different reasons. But I think about it as a different business model. It's doing business during COVID-19, actual business, is a different way than it was in January. It's probably gonna be different 3, 4, 5 months from now. And I've got to imagine that asking for money is gonna be pretty similar.
Great advice, Alan. It is. It's a new world. It's a different business model. You gotta kind of throw it all out and start trying different creative things. So those are some great ideas. Larry, I saw you raise your hand. What is your advice to nonprofits right now, and/or do you want them communicating with you?
Well, I'm a little envious right now because after spending as long as I have in the world of insurance, I'm far less trusting than Alan. So that's become obvious. That being said, I think, one of the challenges we all have, as I mentioned earlier, is the need has exploded. And there is a proliferation of nonprofits, quite honestly, in the Berkshires, and we struggle with which is the right agency to go with to have the biggest impact on the problem that we're trying to help solve. One thing I would urge agencies to do, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by this, but I think it would be really helpful for agencies to really pair up to come up with holistic solutions and come into companies, in total, and even if it's a bigger ask from all of them, but to say, look, this is how we this is how we provide a comprehensive solution to this problem, and this is how we're all going to, work together to get it done. It helps alleviate this crush of, asks on the onesies where you're trying to figure out, are you ultimately impacting folks or not?
And I'd like to echo that. I think it's definitely time that organizations think about, as we talked about, their business model that just changed, reimagine themselves a little bit, think creatively about how, what they're delivering, and think about collaborating and sharing services and partnering. And they hate the word merger. We don't want to say that, but maybe in some cases it would be a good thing for the organization. But just thinking about ways you can collaborate and partner with others and enhance the impact that that you currently have. I think that's something that organizations are definitely going to want to start doing as they're trying to dig out of this. And I agree with what Chuck said earlier. They've been a little quiet just because I think they're just not sure what to do at this point. We haven't had as many. We're receiving COVID-19 emergency requests, but not necessarily the regular grant requests have not been as frequent as they normally would. I think they're just all kind of trying to figure it out at this point. But I think trying to think about reimagining at this point is a good step in the right direction.
So another question that was in the came up in the chat, and I think, Lori, you're the only one since Chuck did, and we did hear from Chuck again. He's very apologetic. They still don't have internet. But I think you're the only one of the folks who are left on who gave to both the Berkshire United Way, Berkshire Taconic, COVID-19, and then are doing some things on your own. And the question in the chat box is, how do you sort of prioritize that? How do you decide how to best balance the two approaches, your direct funding and then this pool resource part?
So we, as I mentioned, we tapped into our endowment over and above our budget. So the funding that we kind of allocated for the COVID-19 response has gone to the collaborative efforts, and in some cases food. A lot of that has been around food insecurity, but in some areas we've supported food banks and things like that. They're doing extraordinary efforts to respond to the need, as well as the small business support through grant funding. So those are the two areas that funding has gone to, but we're continuing with our regular grant programming. So it really hasn't disturbed our regular process, which is really the reason we wanted to do that. I think, you have the endowment for kind of a rainy day, and I don't know if there's another more rainier day than there is now. So that's why we did that. And we felt it was important to do.
But we don't have another one down.
And be able to, because that's when they're out there and we're going to be.
Okay.
So I do think we'll be getting, am I back?
You are kind of in and out.
So I worry a little bit about later in the year. I think we're going to be, really bombarded with requests and applications, just knowing once they kind of get to the other side and realize kind of where we are with things. But we're, continuing with our program and going to continue to be here to support the nonprofits.
So several of you mentioned specifically the word sustainability, which we did have on our list of questions, and/or collaborations, working together, whatever. So I think we should kind of jump into that. We've only got about 10 minutes left. You guys are doing phenomenal. You're just giving folks so much information. But maybe I'll start with Alan, because you used the infamous word sustainability. It's funny when people use the word merger, people get very anxious and excited. Lori and I were involved in a very long process trying to promote mergers. But maybe the real word that should be out there is just sustainability. Is this sustainable? Your size organization, your budget. Alan, to your point, you're asking for money. We know that we have an older population and a lot of very, very, very philanthropic older people who aren't going to be with us, you know, in 10 or 15 years. So what are your thoughts? You've also sat on boards and been involved in boards. What are your thoughts on nonprofit sustainability, specifically in the Berkshires, and I guess then complicated by COVID-19?
Yep. No, I'll try to keep it brief because I know we're short on time. I'll give everyone else a chance to respond as well. My company, we do a lot of work with regular business, for-profit businesses, and turnarounds and growth. And it's a 6 to 18 month process, and it starts with an assessment of your current state, which means tell me about what is your best profit margins. Tell me about where you get the most alpha from this combination of services. Tell me about the incremental value for this next service line that you want to roll out, whatever happens to be. Rarely do they know their numbers. Rarely. I am willing to bet for nonprofits are the same. They don't know how much it costs to provide a particular service. And so I think that they need to do that. I think that they need to, because my sense is a lot of, especially smaller nonprofits, are trying to play catch up all the time. Trying to play catch up to get cash, get funding in order to do the next service that they're going to provide. And the reason they have to always play catch up is because they have what I would consider to be generally, not for everyone, but generally a non-sustainable business model of simply asking for money. There needs to be a secondary source of revenue. I don't know, secondary, if you can make it primary, fantastic. But you need a separate set of revenue other than just simply asking for money. So that's number one, the income side. The other side is the cost part of it. And Lori brought this up, the merger side of it. You are competing for that same donated dollar for a lot of similar services that are being provided in this community and other communities. So think about the word I just said, competing. You're trying to accomplish in a lot of areas the same exact mission, but is this group and that group doing it, and they haven't gotten together to collaborate on. And I'll just say it, it's stupid. You can have an economy of scale where your dollar can stretch further than it would otherwise if you were to work together and minimize those expenses that you have. So not merging is stupid, and so to be sustainable, don't be stupid.
Oh, you are always so direct. We love it. Shelley, do you have any thoughts on sustainability and, you know, kind of how that fits into your view of your investment anyway?
Yeah, I mean, we don't certainly, you know, we don't assess or analyze, you know, their sustainability. It's not really part of, you know, our process. We, you know, more like Alan, we sort of feel like they're going to do the right thing with the money that we give them. But I agree 100%. I know, you know, we certainly, you know, sponsorship levels continue to go up each year because they can't meet their expenses. So, you know, they just continue to raise the sponsorship levels, and, you know, that makes it more challenging for us. Sometimes we can't always meet, you know, they may, you know, certain sponsorship may go from $1,500 to $2,500, and, you know, we just don't have the budget to be able to do that. So that's certainly a challenge. And I agree 100%, you know, considering a partnership, you know, not to pick on any one, you know, group, but, you know, we probably get, you know, a dozen requests throughout our market areas from different choral groups. I'll use as an example that comes to mind. And they're great, you know, arts, culture, it's wonderful. But I agree that I think sometimes if they would consider a partnership, you know, not each individual town doesn't need their own group. Maybe they could partner together and, you know, pool their resources and, you know, become more sustainable for the long term. And I think, you know, the boards, you know, of many of these organizations are an integral part of helping them. Some are very active and, you know, in their giving and in their, you know, and helping with donations and things. And then I think others are not, they're much more passive. So I think when, when they have board members, they need to, think carefully about that as well.
Yeah, that could probably be a whole nother webinar, right? Is board participation and fundraising and being, the ambassadors for the organization. Larry, I think you wanted to say something else about sustainability or.
Yeah, one thing I was going to throw in. So we were early adopters of work from home long before this crisis. And I think every crisis this country has faced has people rise up and their generosity is overwhelming. And then life gets back to normal. So a caution I would throw out there is we found out that there's a number of things that we just haven't been able to replicate through the digital world. And it's things like mentoring, coaching, career development. We certainly work on them and it moves forward, but not with the same speed before. The other thing that we've seen is people feel less a part of community. And we've seen folks' donations drop off the more they work from home and the longer that they've been doing that. So when this ends, we don't know what the world's going to look like. And it may be that a much larger cut of the population ends up working from home. I would encourage all nonprofits to start thinking now, how do we engage with people who are not going into an office and make them feel a part of a bigger community and make them care about this message? Because that's something that we're struggling with, and I imagine many more will as well.
Any final thoughts from you, Lori, on sustainability? You mentioned, a little bit about it, but any other, especially as being you are the chair of the nonprofit, of the Funders Roundtable. So you're talking to and working with funders all the time. So you probably have the pulse.
So we do have an ad hoc group, which we call ourselves Berkshire Funders Roundtable, that meets a few times a year. And we certainly came together, as soon as this happened, to talk through immediate need, and then kind of now we're at the point of talking about recovery and how do we support nonprofits and organizations going forward. And we're really in the beginning stages of it, but we have thoughts around putting together an effort to support just that very thing. So sustainability for nonprofits, resources. We have an outline put together of discussing ways to support organizations around collaboration, partnership, but also reimagining themselves and looking for alternative revenue sources and figuring out new ways of being sustainable. There's a lot of different topics around that. So we like I said, we're in the beginning stages of the conversation, but we will be kind of bringing it to the nonprofit community and talking about it more, because it will be something I think that we're kind of, as Larry mentioned, we're forced into some things a little bit with the situation, and in some ways take advantage of that and be better in the end. So more to come on that, but we welcome any feedback anybody has as well around that topic and what they might need and be seeking. We've had some couple of community conversation webinars through Berkshire Bank Foundation, and we had 100 organizations on each call, maxed out both times. So I know organizations are really seeking resources and information and education at this point. So we're happy to kind of work together on that. And I think in Berkshire County, that's one thing that we really do well, is collaborate and work together. And I've heard that from just so many people inside and outside of Berkshire County, that we come together at times of need and are stronger after in the end. So
great. So we only have 2 minutes left, and we do have one last question. I'm actually just going to put it to Larry, if you guys don't mind, because it's about disability, and he runs the disability insurance division for Guardian. How do you think working from home norm will change for those who are disabled and told they couldn't work from home before?
Well, certainly having a mandate makes you get past a lot of the issues that you have, right? I will be honest and say, I think for a lot of corporate entities, they were imaginary barriers more than anything else. There's a number of folks in management roles who quite honestly have trouble trusting that individuals are going to do what they need to do. And there's individuals who struggle to pivot from, I expect you to work these certain hours to I help you to produce this amount of whatever. I think we've all had intense learning as it's been mandated. You get past those barriers and then you start saying, okay, how do we get this to work? Within our company, whatever people need to work effectively from home, we've given them, and I would expect other businesses to act similarly. Because, if somebody needs something when they're in an office, you get them what they need. So I think if anything, we're just going to get better and better at it. But as I mentioned, there are areas that we have struggled with for years now that we've been doing this, that we need to put attention to. So.
Great, thank you. We are literally 5 o'clock, and I think I'm supposed to hand it back to Liana, but I want to give my personal thanks to the panelists. You guys were terrific. We couldn't even ask all the, Liana and I were a little bit worried we not have enough, we actually have too much time left, and we have 3 questions we couldn't even ask. So you guys did a phenomenal job. Love the variety of organizations you represent. So thank you so much. And Liana.